In this video, I'm going to talk about the two most important decisions that you can make as a normal citizen, not as a rich person, not as a privileged person, but just as a normal citizen to assure your early retirement. The two biggest decisions that you can make that will help you get to early retirement. I'm going to share how that relates to not only earlier in your life, even when you're in your early 20s, but also in the middle part of your life, maybe your late 30s to mid 40s, and then even in the last 5 or 10 years before you are ready to retire. Why these two decisions are the most important. Okay, the first one's really simple, and so I'll cover it first. The second one is a little more complicated, but you'll totally be able to understand it. Okay, the first thing is that people spend money on cars that hurt their retirement. Not just their early retirement, but even their late, normal age retirement. It's not unusual for people to have $350 car payments and full coverage because they've got a bank loan because they're financing. So it's not unusual for people to have $400 and $500 per month going out on a vehicle. That is a bad decision. Let me explain why. You see, if you buy a car about 5 years old with about 50 or 60,000 miles, even the same car that you would buy new, but you buy an older model of it, maybe 5 to 7 years old, and you save up, instead of putting that $300 to $500 a month, you save up over 5 or 10 years and you just pay cash for it. Then what can you do with that $400 or $500 a month that you were going to spend on a new car every 5 years, or every 3 years, or whatever it was? You can do anything with it. You can put it in the stock market. You can put it into any kind of investment, real estate. You could buy a rental property. You could buy your home, save it up until you get a down payment, and then boom, you're ahead of the game. And you know, why is it that people have to have a new car every year? Honestly, it's really kind of to feed their ego. Because a car that is 5 to 7 years old, a Toyota, a Chevy, whatever your thing is, it's still totally serviceable. It still totally works, and it's going to get you wherever you need to go. And you can even get one with reasonable mileage on it, maybe 40, 50, 60,000, that has another 40 or 50,000 miles available on it before you start having any trouble. So you can drive that. You can buy that car for $5,000 or $6,000. Maybe even cheaper, and then you can drive it for 5 years and sell it for $3,000 or $4,000. It's still going to be worth that when it's 10 years old, and you're going to get most of the money back. And so instead of throwing $500, $600 a month out the window, start saving that money and invest it. You'll be surprised the power that you have when you have that self-control to drive. When I was growing up, they called them hoopties. If you drive a hoopty, now I'm not saying a total wreck. Now personally, I would be happy to even go older. But if you need a car for work, or for your job, or to get around in the city you're in, doesn't have public transportation, arguably maybe you should even just be riding public transportation. But that's hard to convince Americans of. They think they need their car. But if you have to have a car, pay cash for it. Save up and pay cash for it. So that's the number one thing. Okay, now let's talk about number two. Number two, the things that people want to buy to prove their worth in society is they want to get a really nice home. Now, this can delay your retirement substantially, at least a decade. Let me explain why. I don't know where you're from, what part of the world, or the United States, or Canada, or wherever, but this equation applies. If you're, and I'll just pick a number because I don't know what homes sell for where you are, but if you're going to buy a house, say $200,000, or $250,000, $500,000, whatever it is, you're going to have to put a down payment, possibly 10%, 20%, so you're going to have to save up. Well, we already showed you how to save the money. Don't drive a new car. Put that money in the bank. Maybe someone will lend you the money to put down or whatever. But if you buy that $200,000 house, or $300,000 or whatever it is, And let's say your payment, your principal, interest, your taxes, and your insurance is going to be whatever, $1,200, $1,400 a month. It depends on the price of the house. In most parts of the world, a mortgage payment in the first 5 years is actually more than the house would rent for. So you're piling money into that house that you wouldn't have to if you were just renting. Now, I'm not telling you to rent. I'm going to tell you something else in a minute here. But the point is, if you had to rent it, let's say that you got a job in another city and now you had to rent that house, you'd have a negative cash flow. So you'd have to feed that house once you move out of it. Or you're feeding it more money than you need to than if you're renting. In either case, the house isn't necessarily a good investment. Now you're going to say, wait a second, what about inflation? It's going to go up in value. My mom bought a house for $30,000 and when it was in her retirement age, her house was worth $1 million or whatever. Yeah, I get you. Listen to this idea though. It also applies. The same appreciation is going to happen. When you're young, when you first get married, I told you it would be 3 times. I'm going to tell you this makes sense. I'll start with when you're young. If you buy a 4-plex, here's what's interesting about it. If you move into one of the units in most parts of the world, you can get what's called owner-occupied financing, which is about the same interest rate you're going to get on that house. And the other thing is, you'll have the rental income from the other 3 units. You live in one unit. Now you're young, so maybe you're just married. Maybe you're not married yet. Maybe you're single. Maybe you're about to have a baby. But let's say you buy a 4-plex and you're thinking, oh no, I can't have a 4-plex. I want to raise a family. Here's what you do. Your first house, you're young, you don't even have a baby yet, or maybe have one baby. You buy a 4-plex, the rental income helps you qualify for a higher price. But just using simple math, that house that was $200 for one place, that would probably only rent for $800 or $900 or $1,000, you can buy a 4-plex for about $100 more, for about $300. Now it's going to be smaller. It'll be 1 or 2 bedroom units. It won't be a 3-bedroom, 2-car garage and all that. But you're a new family. You have a baby. The baby could sleep in the same room with you. You live there for a year or 2 till that kid hits maybe 2 or 3 years of age. Now you have a 4-plex. When you move out of that 4-plex, your unit is rented now too. There's a good chance that you're just about near a break-even cash flow. But even better than that, if you can somehow manage to keep that 4-plex afloat until you retire, there's 4 units that you can rent out now. So instead of, now it's not a house, so it's not, each of those units isn't going to rent for whatever, let's say $1,000. But they'll rent for like $750. But now there's 4 of them, right? $750 times 4, you're talking $3,000. So not only does it break even quicker, but it has a huge income coming in off of it, because it's 4 units instead of a single family house. So you move in it when you're new in life, you're newly married, you stay there a few years, and you continue to own it. Maybe once you've got 2 kids, they're a little older, they want their own room or whatever, then you think about maybe buying a house, or maybe you buy another 4-plex that has 2 or 3 bedrooms. You can make that choice later. But think about that. You keep that thing, and over like a 20-year period, you pay a little bit, as rents increase, you pay a little bit more towards the mortgage. Within 20 years, that thing is paid off. In fact, I'm sitting in a 4-plex right now. I'll show you what I'm talking about. But once that's paid off, guess what? That's $750 a month. Now it's $1,000, it's $1,500. The rents they go up over a 10 or 15-year period. Now you might have $4,000 or $5,000 a month in rent because you were willing to not live in a big house right away and have a big celebration when you're newly married with 1 kid. But now you just have a 4-plex. It's nothing. It's nothing you can brag about. Have your whole family over for a big party and hold the neighborhood there, or whatever. But it's a smart decision. And now when you retire, you have 4 units paying you. And think about it, your retirement age now, if you wanted to move back into that 4-plex, you have a paid off 4-plex, you have 1 you live in for free because the mortgage is paid off now, and you have 3 units paying you rent. And if let's say they're $1,000 a month or $1,200 a month by then, do you think you can figure out how to live on $3,600 a month if the other 3 rents? Yeah, you can. But what if it was a house? Time for you to move back in. Guess what? That house, you move into it, you can't rent it out. No income. And so the down payment's about the same, and because you can use the income from the other 3 units, you can qualify for a higher price fourplex. And bingo, now when you're ready to retire, you have income and a free place to stay. And so that's why you should buy it. It should be your first property you buy instead of, and you're thinking, oh, I can't qualify, I can barely buy a house, how could I buy a fourplex? Again, you get to take the rental income and put that towards the payment on the fourplex. So even though it might be $100,000 more, might even be $150,000 more, you get to take that money and you get to take part of that rental income, not all of it. They'll probably allow you 80% of it. You get to add that to what you can pay on the house. Add that, maybe let's say that the rents are $350 on the other units, and they allow you, I don't know, I'm going to keep talking. Let's say the rent is $750 on the other units, and they allow you $500 a unit. That's $1,500 income you get to put towards qualifying. If you can qualify for another $1,000, suddenly you can qualify for $2,500 a month because of the income on the fourplex. That's when you're young. Okay, so when you're young, you buy a fourplex. Now, let's say you're 30, 35, 40, and you're thinking, hey, I own a house already. Now, this is a different story. You own a house, and you're thinking, hey, all my friends bought big houses. They all bought McMansions. I need to buy a McMansion. Guess what? Same story applies. Instead of you selling your house, taking the money, and putting it down on a McMansion, I got a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house with a swimming pool. All my friends want to come over, and we're going to party. Guess what? It's the same story applies. That money that you pull out of the house and buy a bigger house, if instead of doing that, remember you're driving a hoopty car, no payments, over that 10-year period after you bought that house, you're saving that money up. Instead of buying a bigger house and selling this one, you keep the house and stay in the original house you bought. And you buy, maybe you have to pull a second on it, but you buy a fourplex now. And now you have 5 units. So now it'll take, with rent raises and everything, it'll probably take you 15 or 20 years to pay it off. But now you have the house and you have a fourplex. Instead of having one big house, that guess what? That one big house, even if it rents for $3,000, it's not going to be the same as the one house you had that's renting by the time inflation occurs and everything. It's renting for $1,500, not $3,000, but $1,500. The first house you bought, and guess what? It's paid off by now. The fourplex is 20 years later, and now the fourplex is almost paid off. Now you have 5 units. The house is renting for $1,500 or $2,000. Each of those units is renting for $1,000. You see how if you think smart instead of like thinking about everybody else wants an expensive car, they want an expensive house, they want to impress everyone around them. If you think smart, you're going to be able to retire early and make better choices. Okay, what about, let's say you're just 10 years from retirement. What do you do now instead? Okay, so what do most people do when it comes time to, that's getting near retirement? They're 10 years out from retirement. What do? They think, oh, I'm going to retire in 10 years. I'm going to downgrade, I'm going to buy a condo and pay it off. No, you don't do that. Guess what you do? You sell your house and you put down a huge amount on a fourplex. You pay it off over 10 years, and now you have 4 units. Or you keep the house, you pull a mortgage on it, a second or whatever, and put that down on the fourplex. And you try to pay everything off by 10 or 15 years. Now you have 4 or 5 units that you're collecting rent on. And you're thinking, I don't want to be a manager. I don't want to get phone calls about plumbing. I don't want to evict people if they don't pay the rent. I don't do any of that. I'm sitting in a fourplex now. I have a manager. I pay him 8% of the rents, and he does everything. Honestly, I get statements once a month. I get an annual statement. I give it to my accountant, and he takes care of it. We have a rule that unless he has an expense of over $2,000, he doesn't call me. He makes all the right decisions. Now, you have to find a good property manager, but if you make smart decisions and quit thinking about what's going to make you look good and think about what's going to allow you to have more choices in life, you have to start thinking that way. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you if you really want nice cars and nice houses and all that. And maybe that'll work out for you. Maybe it won't, and there's a lot of people smarter than me out there that are figuring out different ways to do things. But for me, the thing I like about this is if you're just a normal American, you have a normal job, and you're willing to drive a car that's 5 to 10 years old, your mortgage, you have no car payments, your insurance is much lower because you don't need full coverage, and you live in a normal house in a normal neighborhood, and quit buying a big mansion every 5 or 10 years and upgrading, and start and save that difference and begin to invest instead of upgrade, you're going to be retired at 40, 45, 50. That's what the point is. And you're going to have more choices. You won't have all that stress on yourself. If the economy crashes, you're not going to care so much because your payment is going to be a payment you set up 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You'll have like a $1,200 mortgage payment instead you bought a McMansion, and now you have a $300 mortgage payment. You or your partner loses your job. You don't have the income anymore to pay $3,000 a month, and so then you lose the house. See. It's more conservative. It's not so flamboyant. You're not keeping up with the Joneses. It's more of a humble existence, but it puts you at the driver's seat. If you try to run as fast as the Joneses do, you're not in the driver's seat. The bank is. Rates go up. Guess what? Your rates go up. You're probably going to get a variable mortgage instead of a fixed because you can get a couple extra $100 a month I can pay if I get the lower variable rate, and I can buy an extra 800 square feet. Don't think like that. Think long term. Think you want to enjoy the world while you're young enough to enjoy it. So whether you're young, you're middle-aged, or you're just 5 or 10 years out from retirement, drive a hoopty, drive an old car. Pay the minimum insurance, that you need to. You don't need full coverage, and buy a fourplex if you're young, or the next thing you buy after your house when you learn about this is a fourplex. And when you're going to a new country, you don't sell your property here and buy something in another country. I have a whole video on that. You keep what you have here. You know the law here, and you know that what all the rules are. You can watch my video on that, why you need to own in your home country and you rent in a foreign country, and if anything happens bad, it's no problem for you. You just go to a new country, and you don't have a house sitting there you can't sell because the market crashed or whatever. And so you should invest in your own backyard. Don't invest overseas. That's silly. Enjoy overseas. When you're retired, you want the easy peasy life. You don't want to figure out what local laws are and who's going to try to rip me off and how's everything work. And I just got here and now I'm going to sell my house back home and invest here. And then, a year or two later, somebody opens up a pig farm down the street from you because they have no zoning laws. Read or watch my video about why you should not buy real estate overseas, and keep your stuff here. Travel the world. Let your manager worry about the phone calls. You get the money wired into your account, pull it out as you need it out of the ATM. Think easy peasy and quit trying to keep up with the Joneses. But remember, I'm just a guy on the internet. I'm not your accountant. I'm not your financial planner. And every market is different depending on what part of the country or the world you're in, the financing terms and all of it. So this is just ideas. You take it to your accountant, your financial planner, and bounce it off them before you make any decision. Hey, if you live somewhere in the world that's beautiful and cheap and you'd like to come on the channel and be a guest star and tell the public about it, please leave a comment below. Thanks so much. This is Dan of Vagabond Awake. Hey, don't give up on your retirement dreams. Come check out our Retire Cheap reports all over the world. You can probably retire somewhere in the world beautiful like this for much less than you thought. Thanks for watching. Click the link below this YouTube video.